to say about this thing. Hello, and welcome to Jason's Macintosh Museum. I'm Jason, your host, and today we're looking at something a little bit different from your average Apple Macintosh. We're actually looking at the original Apple Newton MessagePad from 1993. Now, I'm sure that many of you will remember the period in the 1980s and 1990s when the PDA, or Personal Digital Assistant, really came into the world. And of course, it all stems back from the personal organisers that were around in the 1980s. You've probably seen them. Sharp made quite a few of them. Casio made quite a few. And they were designed to simply replace the old-fashioned book where you took down phone numbers and names and kept appointments and everything else. So these old PDAs were somewhat useful, but the problem that they always had at the time was that you had to interact with them using a physical keyboard. And that, of course, meant that it was very difficult to very quickly jot something down as you would in a notebook, because you had to interact with a keyboard to put data into these PDAs. And compounding the problem was the fact that in order to keep the size of these PDAs down, they had to use very small keyboards and very small keys. And I mean, a good example is, in fact, the early Casio, or even the later Casio PDAs that used a physical keyboard. Very hard to type on, and so it meant they were a little bit clunky to use. But the concept was still a good concept, in that if you had an electronic device that could contain all of your appointments, all of your calendar entries, all of your names and contacts, it would mean that it would be much easier to organise this information, and also easier to synchronise it with a desktop computer. So during the early 1990s, there was a mad rush to develop a PDA that more closely emulated a physical notebook. In other words, a PDA that would actually recognise your handwriting. And so Apple was one of several manufacturers who worked on this, and along with, I think, Casio and Palm, were among the first to get a product out to market that they claimed would support your handwriting. Well, as we all know, that didn't really work as expected. But in 1993, Apple released this device, the Newton MessagePad, onto the market. It was released, I think, in April of 1993 in the United States. And their claim was that you don't need a physical keyboard, because you can simply write on the device with a pen, a special pen, however you write, no matter what sort of writing style you have, it will recognise it into proper text and store it for you. And so, as a result, without having to use a physical keyboard, they could use almost all of the footprint of the device to house the screen, which, as you can see, is relatively large for the size of the device. And another breakthrough that Apple was claiming for the Newton was to do with its connectivity, because prior PDAs had very limited connectivity options to the outside world. You could really only synchronize them with a computer, and that was about it. You couldn't really use the device as a standalone communications system. Well, Apple was claiming that for the Newton, you could do all sorts of things with it. You could send and receive faxes. You could send and receive email. You could dial up to another computer's modem. You could also receive pages on it, as in through the pager network, I should say. Now, technically, the Newton could do all of that. However, you needed to buy external equipment to make it work, because the Newton itself has nothing more than a standard serial port for its communication. Therefore, to do really any of those tasks, you had to purchase and connect an external device, whether it was an external fax modem or a pager module or something like that. So it could, in theory, be used for standalone communication, but as it was out of the box, all you could really do with it was synchronize it with an external PC. Although the Newton does have one, almost a bit of a gimmick, I should say, when it comes to interacting with telephones, which I'll show you during the demonstration of this device. So when the Newton was launched, it was initially a great success, because this being really the first PDA that had handwriting recognition, people, they loved it. They thought it was a really cool thing to have, until they tried to use it, and that's when everything fell apart. You see, Apple were being a little bit too ambitious with the Newton, and the problem simply was that the hardware and software that was available at the time just wasn't up to the task of proper, reliable, and fast handwriting recognition. And that's what the Newton is remembered for now. It's remembered for its often appalling handwriting recognition capabilities. And it's a question of, first of all, simply getting words wrong. There have been many well-publicized incidents of someone writing a particular phrase on an Apple Newton and it recognizing it as something completely different. And the other issue, though, was also the speed. Because the Newton only had a 20 megahertz ARM CPU, it just didn't have enough raw power to very quickly recognize handwriting. And so often you would find there could be quite a delay between when you wrote something down and when it actually was recognized into text. And for someone trying to take a note down in a hurry, that could be a bit of a problem. Now, having said that, the Newton's handwriting recognition system did improve over time. And what I mean by that is that the more you used it, the better it got, because it did attempt to learn your style of writing. And it also introduced a feature which persists to this day in the modern iPhone, where you can correct a word by tapping on it, and the device will give you a list of suggestions to choose from. And so it can also learn based on that. So if there's a particular word that it constantly gets wrong, if you tell it, this is the word I meant, it will store that information for later use. And let's not forget that the other real benefit to the Newton handwriting recognition system is that it didn't force you to write your letters in a certain way. As an example of that, if we look at the system that Palm used, which was called Graffiti, it forced you to, first of all, write your letters in a particular area of the screen, and second of all, you had to use a writing style specified by them. In other words, you had to print each letter separately in block capitals, which was a little bit disconcerting at first, although it did work more reliably. But it meant that, unlike the Newton, you couldn't simply write something down as you would on a normal piece of paper and have the system recognize it. And as well, with the Newton, because you could write anywhere on the screen, whatever you wrote stayed in that particular area of the screen, just like using a standard notebook with paper. Now, another issue, though, with the Newton also comes down to the software that was available for it. Because when the Newton came out, what did it have? Well, you basically got a notepad, you got a card index for contacts, you got a calendar or appointment scheduler, you got a currency converter, which, of course, into which you had to preset all of the various conversion rates. You got a unit converter. You got a world time clock. You got... that was really about it, I think. There wasn't much more that came with the Newton as standard. And unfortunately, the Newton itself, at least this version, has such a small amount of memory that you really couldn't install any other applications, although having said that, there weren't many available for the Newton, not until version 2 of the software came out. Of course, this is running version 1. So, even though it did perform the basic functions of a PDA, it didn't really allow the user to expand its capabilities to any great extent, at least not in the original version. And I should also mention that Apple's decision to fit the Newton with AAA batteries was both a blessing and a curse. Because when you think about it, using a standard battery is a good idea, because it means that no matter where you are, you can always get hold of replacement batteries for the device. However, it also means that the battery life isn't very good. Now, I have to admit, I'm not sure what the official battery life of the original Newton was, but I do know that because of the AAA batteries, it was quite poor. But thankfully, Apple did update later versions of the Newton to use AA batteries, which did help quite a bit. Now, it turns out, though, that even though the original versions of the Newton had quite a few issues, especially with their handwriting recognition, Apple did work a lot of these out, because later Newton devices that ran the Newton OS version 2 apparently were much improved in terms of handwriting recognition and overall stability. Unfortunately, I've never actually used a device that runs Newton OS 2, and this original Newton can't run anything newer than, I think, OS 1.2, I think. But it'll be a good opportunity to see really how the modern PDA started. Because really, you could argue that the PDA, there were really 3 different forms of PDA over the years. The first being the type with a physical keyboard, then the type with a stylus, like this, and then the modern type, i.e. a smartphone or a tablet, that uses your finger rather than a stylus. But in terms of being able to interact directly with the screen, the Apple Newton really is the first device of its kind. So, some quick specifications on the Newton, the original Newton. This is the original MessagePad, and actually doesn't have a model number, because even though there was a Newton MessagePad 100, that was a later version with updated software, but the same hardware as this. This, however, is the very first model. So this was launched in August of, not August, it was launched in April or August, or April or August? Okay, it was August of 1993, and discontinued in March of 1994. And this version had a 20 MHz ARM 610 CPU, 4 megabytes of ROM, and only 640K of RAM. And in terms of batteries, it took 4 AAAs or an external charger, and you had an infrared port, which used the Sharp infrared protocol. I forget what it was called. And you also got a serial port, a standard serial port as used on the Macintosh for connecting to a fax modem or to another PC. So, that's really all there is to say about the original Apple Newton. So, now we'll have a closer look at it. Okay, well here's the front view of the Apple Newton MessagePad, and my ugly face in the screen there. Just ignore that. So what we have is, well, from the top we have the Newton logo, which is out of focus now. Come on. There we go. The little picture of a light bulb, which I think Apple used all the way through all the different Newton models. Now on the side you can see we have the stylus, which we'll come to in a second, but interesting that they didn't actually make a space inside the unit for the stylus, they simply tacked it onto the side, which they did change for the later versions of the Newton. Then we have the screen, black and white, touch screen, although you have to use the stylus to operate it. It won't work with any other device. And then down here we have the hard buttons, you could say, because these actually don't form part of the screen. Even though you can tap them with the stylus, they don't actually change. So we have, let's see, names, that would be your contacts folder. dates, that's the calendar. Extras, well, that's really brings up a menu where you can choose any other options that the system has. And we have the up and down arrows, which let you scroll through a list of things. Undo, find, and assist. Now, assist is basically a feature where you can ask the Newton to do something and it tries to understand your question. Doesn't work terribly well, I have to say. Down the bottom we have the Apple logo, MessagePad, and the speaker. So, that's the front. Now, let me quickly flip it to the side, if I can get it to stand up. This could be tricky. I might just rest it against... There we go. Let's do that. So up on the top we have the locking lever and release lever for the built-in PC card, which is inserted from the top. Got the power switch here, and that's all for that side. Not much to really see there. Let's look at the other side. Okay, so here's the stylus up at the top. It sits into the its little cradle there. You can just pull it out like so. And then down from there, I think we have the ports. Yes, we do. So we have the focus. We have the serial port behind this cover, and we have the charging port behind that cover. And let's see what we have on the back. Okay, so here's the back. Not much to really see. We have the various. Let's see. We have the identification information. So it's the original Apple Newton. So you can see it's model H1000, made in Japan. I think, in fact, actually Sharp may have made this under license from Apple. I'm not quite sure, but it made in Japan, 7-volt supply from 1983 Apple computer. And then below that we have the battery compartment. Now this is something that has always puzzled me about the original Newton, because in later versions of the Newton, all they had behind the cover was 4 compartments where you inserted 4 batteries. In the case of later models of the Newton, it was AA batteries. But with this model, they did it a little bit differently, as I'll show you. What they did was they had a space down here where you had to insert a special battery holder. So you'd put the AA batteries, or the AAA batteries in this case, into a battery holder, then put the battery holder into that slot. I've never understood why. Why not simply have 4 separate slots that you can put the batteries into? And the problem here is that I don't actually have the battery holder for this, but thankfully I can power it up off the charger. So the battery holder would go in there if I had one. And up the top, above there, we have the backup battery and the switch to, obviously, looks like it's there to isolate the batteries from the system depending on what you want to do. So, in other words, if you're replacing the main batteries, you would move the switch there, and I would presume that then links the backup battery into the circuit, possibly. To replace backup, you slide it over here. Oh, no, you slide it. Oh, okay. I've just realised I can't move the switch back unless I put a battery holder in. There must be some kind of interlock, and I think it's probably this here. Yes, it is. So if I move over, you can see now that. Move it to replace backup. I can actually get the backup battery out because this little plastic piece moves out of the way. So, and again, if I push, I have to push that to. God, it's a bit over-engineered, I have to say. I don't know why they bothered with all that, but anyhow. Okay, let's put that back to, there we go. Right, so that's our look, the outside of the Apple Newton MessagePad. So what we'll do now is, well, at least we will partially take it apart. Okay, now I think what we'll do to start with is we'll just take the stylus out of the Newton. Just move that away, move that to the side, and we'll take the battery cover off as well. Okay. Now, I think to take this back cover off, we have to take off the screws that are exposed here, 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 and here, I think. So let's see how we go. Okay, well we've taken them all out, so hopefully I can separate the two halves of the case unless I'm missing another screw. Maybe there's one up here behind the... Oh, we've got to take that out too. The blanking plate for the PC card slot. Well, I think at this point I've taken everything out. I'll be very careful. I don't want to break this. Oh, here we go. I think we're getting somewhere. This side is... Oh, the IR port cover just came off. I don't think there's anything else I need to take out. So I've got it half open, as you can see. This side, though, does not want to release. It looks like there's a clip or something up here I have to be very careful of. Have I taken all the screws out? Yes, I have. Okay, I'll get a screwdriver that hopefully I can use to very carefully separate the case, and I'll be right back. Okay, I think I've got it worked out now. I had to very carefully pop two plastic clips about here and here. Now I've done that, I should be able to pull the back cover off. And there we are. Now at this point I don't really want to go any further in the disassembly because I'm worried I might damage the screen or something else, because all you're going to have really is the main circuit board and the screen on the other side. So I think I may stop here. It's because I do not want to break this. Okay, I've decided I will press on and we'll see if we can separate the main board from the system. So I have to take all the screws out with the arrows pointing to them, I presume. So let's very carefully do that. Yeah, I'm a little bit nervous doing this, so I do not want to break this. So they're the ports that are... Oh, hang on, unless I have to take this out. Oh, hang on a minute. Oh, I think this just separates the front panel off, I think. Yes, it does. Yep. So, right. Then I should be able to lift up. Oh, hang on. Oh, there's a clip here I have to move. I think. I'm getting a bit nervous now. Well, silly old me, I'd forgotten to take one screw out right here. So that's why I couldn't separate the board from the rest of the system. Hopefully I can do that now. Let's see. Aha, that's looking better. I think that's the speaker connector. I might have to desolder that actually. I may have to do that. Can I move it out of the way, maybe? Yeah, we're getting closer. We're getting closer. Now I think on this side I have to move this. Now how does this work? This is the eject mechanism for the PC card. Are there any other screws that I've missed? I don't think there are. No. This side is certainly free. Something's still hooked up. I've just noticed also how thin the PCB is. I don't know if you can see it, but it is very, very thin. So I'll be extremely careful. I don't want to force anything. Oh, hang on. Oh, hello. I think, oh, this is looking better. Just got to take these, unhook these, oh, not even in frame, there we go. Just got to unhook these, the little battery terminal clips. Oh, which I think I do by pushing on the tab and moving up. Well, this will be a bit tricky. I have to use two. Oh, that one's up, and this one, push on the clip here. Aha! There we go. Oh, hold on, the screen cable. Can't forget about that. Ah, right, now, just have to very carefully disconnect the screen cable, which you can see is just sitting in there. So I'll just carefully push the tabs in to unhook that. There we go. Ah, very good. So now we have the main board separated from the case and the screen. Very good. Oh, I see the speaker's actually hardwired. I might just take that out, I think. So I don't have to desolder the wires going to it. Now, in fact, the speaker doesn't work on this, so maybe I'll have a quick look and see if there's a bad connection or something. Right, that's not going to help me. I have to desolder the wires. Do I? I think I do. Almost looks like it was an afterthought. So they put the speaker in, then had to solder the wires to it. So I can't take it out of there. Not with the wires attached. Right, I'll desolder them and we will be right back. Okay, well now that I was able to disassemble the Newton enough to get the logic board out, we can have a look at it. So, hopefully if I zoom into retain focus, there we go. Right, so what have we got? Well, let's see, back of the IR board up there, I think. Looks like a couple of ROM chips there, and this would be the onboard RAM over here. I presume that's probably static RAM to save on power. And this LSI chip, I believe, is Apple's custom IC for their system. That would be the ARM 610 CPU at 20 megahertz. I'm not sure what that AMD chip is there for. Not entirely sure. What else have we got? Oh, there's the battery compartment. Some more components there. And the connectors, that's the connector for the serial port, and then the power plug or charger connector down at the bottom. So it's pretty well integrated. Just flip it over and we'll have a look at the other side. If it's going to stand up. So obviously the Pcmcia card slot takes up a lot of room here. That's the IR port up there. Oop. What else is there? Not much really worth talking about. That'd be the power switch there. Battery terminals there. And I presume that's probably a thermistor to determine if the batteries are overheating or something, because that actually is right next to the battery compartment. It's a connector for the screen. That's probably the battery in switch and the serial and charging connectors. Oh, it's quite well integrated. So, well, that's about all there is to look at. So, thank you for watching part 1 of the video series on the Apple Newton MessagePad. In part 2, assuming I can successfully reassemble this, we will I'll fire it up and show you some of the software that comes with the device, and we'll see just how good its handwriting recognition really is. So, once again, thank you for watching, and stay tuned for part 2. Because it was, for its time, a very, very... If you remember those old PDF... No. That's not what I want to say. And not just the handwriting recognition, but there were all... Even though it was designed to take the place of... No. Didn't really... No. In other words, many... Now, having said that, though, the Newton's handwriting... it also means that the battery life isn't very good. I think I have to look... No. Off. Bloody thing's doing it again. Just give me the...